Okay, um, this is for the 3-4 students who are getting ready to go onto the wheel for the first time. I'm just showing you how to set it up and how to get started with the first part of throwing a piece. There's 2 days, or 2 parts, I should say. There's throwing the piece, and then there's trimming the piece. And throwing the piece is what we do on the throwing wheel. First things I want to talk about are the things that you're going to need to set up. In order to keep, well, you need the 2 pieces of clay. This is right off the bag, which is wedged. You can also wedge it some more. Approximately like baseball size. These are not round, but approximately baseball size. Especially for the first time, maybe a little bit smaller. Newspaper, you're going to use to cover this tray. Makes cleanup way easier. So make sure not to forget this part. So you just cover the tray as much as you can with newspaper like this is good. And then I have kits for throwing. And this has all the tools that you'll need. You won't need them all always, but I like to have 2 different sponges. There's the trimming tool for the second day. This needle tool is typically for the second day. This is also, this is called a rib. You can use this on the first and maybe second day. Another rib. And then these clay cutters, these are very fine wire cutters, and they can get tangled. So make sure to be very careful for the first time getting them out of here, and then making sure they don't have a knot in them. And then we've got another trimming tool, and then this is the wooden knife that is used for trimming and for throwing. This is probably the most important one right here for me. Well, I guess then either one of them is really most important. So these are the tools you'll be using, and then you need a bucket or a bowl of water available. I'm gonna get, okay. So the main thing with starting anything that you're building on the wheel is to get it centered in the middle of the wheel. This all works off centrifugal force and manipulating the clay using centrifugal force. So getting it centered in the middle of this disc is the wheel is very important. So on the wheel, you'll typically find circles, and then there's a dot close to the center sometimes, and that's where you want to basically smack this down into the center. Some people, you will look when they get this a little bit wet before they do this. I kind of would like it more on the drier side. So if it has just been cleaned like this, getting the dust off, I will kind of fan it to let most of the moisture come off. And then you try and smack it down as close to center as you can. Like that. The switch to turn on the wheel is here, and it's like a light switch, it's underneath, and you just flip it and it turns on the wheel. Safety concerns, really important for the first time being on the wheel. Never try and grab anything out from in here. This gets spinning, and my finger won't fit, so it'll crush my finger and push it through the other side, and you can break your finger. So don't ever try and grab anything that might get stuck in here. Stop the wheel and then get it out. Never try and get up and move off the wheel while this is spinning, because this is like a 200-pound disc down here that keeps the wheel spinning. So if you step on that, you can be thrown down very easily. Also, something you may not think of, you're wearing an apron, make sure to tie it and have the strings behind you. If the strings are hanging down here, they can get wrapped around this pole and they will suck you in and smash your face into a spinning ball of clay. And I've seen it happen. You can look it up on YouTube. Okay, so now that I've got this smashed into the middle, I need to get it centered and smooth so I can work with it. The first thing I'm gonna do is just get it spinning slowly, get my hands wet by sticking them in the water, and just let them run on the outside, just kind of putting water on this. I'm not putting any pressure whatsoever. And then down here where the clay comes to the wheel, I'm going to use my finger and just kind of seal it to the wheel. So right now, the bottom of this piece of clay is sealed to the wheel. But you can see it's not even, it's lumpy, and now I need to do what's called centering. So I move my body over to my right so that my left hand comes in at the center, or 6 o'clock. You look at this like a clock. Come straight in at 6 o'clock. And my right hand is going to come back at 12 o'clock. So I'm pushing towards the center, and I'm going to put pressure back this way, while I have my foot on the pedal, keeping the wheel going as fast as it'll go. So you can see how it's starting to look more centered here and not so wobbly. All the unevenness is going to come to the top. Also, when working on the wheel, you should be wearing like good closed shoes, tied, no flip-flops, no open-toe shoes. So what I'm doing now is I'm pushing with my palm towards the center. I'm pulling back, pushing pressure this way until I try and get this kind of a shape. So you can see all this unevenness now on the top. That's where all the unevenness comes from the clay. So now what I'm going to do, the method I was taught and works well, is I'm going to grab my thumb with my right hand. I'm going to use this part of my hand to push in. And I'm going to use this part of my other hand to push down on this corner, this edge here. And it's going to kind of make this thing bend over and then get squashed down. And it should end up looking kind of like a gumdrop when I'm done. So I'm going to take this, push it in, and use this and push it over. So it's one movement. And then I slowly move away, and then that's kind of the shape I'm going for. It still looks uneven. I can still feel it. It's uneven. You can see my hands moving around under there because the clay is still not so made even and condensed. So I'm just going to keep going through this process, pushing it and then pushing it down, and then eventually it will become smooth, like it won't feel lumpy, it won't feel wobbly, and it'll be what's called centered. Pulling in towards the bottom with my hand. And if you look online, you'll see people center in all different sorts of ways. This is the way I was taught, it worked well for me, and this is the way I teach. So, one thing you'll notice, but you may not pick up on, is I never move my hands quickly. So if I'm pushing and I'm putting my weight, pushing this clay towards the center, and I let go quickly, it becomes wobbly because it flops back. So when I'm leaning on it and I want to let go, I let go very slowly. Like I don't want it to know that I'm letting go. And then it stays where it was. So it's still just a little bit uneven. I can feel it with my fingertips. You may not be able to see it, but I'm just going to push in towards the center one more time. On the bottom, push this way, pull back, push it down. I'm going to move my right hand kind of backwards a little bit, trying to round off the top here. And then I'm going to let go. So this is pretty well centered. I feel a little bit unevenness in there. I could spend some more time getting it even. I can also use my sponge, squeeze out the water, drag it on here, clean up the wheel a little bit so I can see what I'm up. And I can push through the sponge. So when I feel like I've got it centered, then I'm ready to start. I'm ready to start opening up the form. So obviously, before you start working on the wheel, you're going to want to have an idea of what it is that you're wanting to make. I'm going to use this rib right now and clean up right down towards the bottom. I'm just going to scrape in and pull over towards the center, cleaning up some of the clay off the wheel next to my center piece. The water that I keep putting on here is to keep it slippery so that it'll slide through my hands. If I don't have enough water on it, it'll catch on my hands and it'll twist the clay, and you don't want your clay twisted. I'm actually having a hard time getting this centered. Down, you can see it's wobbling, and I don't know if it's slipped on the wheel. I feel like it may have. Okay, so basically the wheel is for making round things, bowls, cups, basics. So I'm going to, is it going okay? All right, so I'm gonna just show you, they all kind of start similarly. The first thing you wanna do is open your form. So I'm gonna find the center here where everything spins around and my finger does not move. It's kind of like spinning a basketball on your fingertip. It's the center spot. And then as I keep some water in this spot, I'm gonna just gently push my finger straight down. Taking my time to make sure I stay right on that spot. My finger will not move because it's right in the center. And as I get down close to the bottom, I want to make sure to leave like a finger's width of clay down there. I start to get close, I'm going to put 2 fingers in there together and move down. I want to stop before I hit the wheel. If I hit the wheel, then I've just made a tube of clay and it won't have a base to it. So I'm going to stop about 1/2 inch from the wheel. I'm guessing it looks like it's about 1/2 inch from the wheel. I'm trimming up this top. I'm just taking my finger and smoothing up the top there. You notice I've slowed the wheel down. I've taken my foot off the pedal. So now that I've gotten this opened up like this, now I can start to pull back evenly with my finger on the wall to open it up more. But at this point, I need to know what it is that I'm making. So if I'm making a tall disc, then I don't want to pull it open too much. I'm going to just pull up. If I'm making a bowl, I need to open it up. If I'm making a base, I can pull it up and then open up the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you pulling it up a little bit, and then I'm going to show you opening it up a little bit. So I like to hold the sponge so I can push my fingers through the sponge. I'm pushing with my left finger on the inside bottom, my right finger on the outside bottom. This one is a little bit below this one. So I just kind of pinch the clay between those. I don't want the wheel going too fast, but I sped it up a little bit. And I'm slowly moving my fingers up until I get to the top. And when I get to the top, I run my finger like this, clean up the rim. Going back down towards the bottom. I'm pushing inside and outside, moving my finger up. That little string of clay that went up the side is going to come to the top. I'm probably just going to clean that off. So notice I have my hands connected. I want them to be like a tool. They work together. So this one is pushing just above the outside finger, and then I'm moving up like this. Just kind of pinching the clay thinner. You definitely want to make sure your clay is slippery. So I'm sliding, pinching, trying to keep it even as I move up. Don't be in a hurry. Get to the top, clean up any unevenness. Okay. For the first time that you try this, I'm definitely making this look easier than it's going to be for you. But this is the idea. This is a pretty thin structure right here, so I'm going to have a really hard time getting my hand down to the bottom if I want to keep it this thin. So I'm going to open it up a little bit more. I'm just going to push out at the bottom, more from the inside than the outside. I'm pushing out. I could even just go with one hand. And so here's where, if I wanted to make a mug, a coffee mug, I could get it to the right width. I'm keeping it relatively straight on the side. I could use my rib, the wooden rib, here it is, to straighten up the edge. You can see how if I thin it out a little bit, maybe make it a little bit wider even, this could be a nice mug. I can make a handle for it. But so that's a straight cylindrical piece, right? So that's one thing you can do. I'm gonna try, if I can, to show you 3 different things you could do with this. Actually, I can only show you 2. So if I were to push out at the bottom, it could bulge this part out, and then I could strangle this, and then I can make a lip. I can make like a little vase. If I put my hand on the inside here and I slowly lean it back and I open it up like that, I can make a bowl. So right now with this one piece of clay, I show you, it could be a coffee cup. I can make it taller and thinner because it's kind of thick right now. If it'd be too heavy, it won't be heavy. So I can make this into a mug by straightening it. I can make it into a bowl by pulling out the wall, just leaning it out like this and making a bowl like that. I'm going to demonstrate how to make a little vase. So I'm going to push out at the bottom. I'm going to strangle it kind of towards the top, and then I'm going to flare out the neck. So I'm going to use the sponge as I push out at the bottom, and you're going to start just to see it bulge down towards the bottom. You always want to keep yourself braced on something, usually the wheel. So I slowly let go, otherwise it's going to have a funky shape. So you can already see how it's bending out at the bottom, because I'm just pushing the inside. I got a bit of water in there, so I'm just sticking the sponge in there and soaking it up. I'm going to push out a little bit more. Kind of moving my sponge up as I'm pushing out. The better you get on the wheel, the thinner your pieces will get. So I'm now just pinching a little bit and moving my hand up the side, basically just thinning it out a little bit as I go with that shape that I've now created. Okay, so now I'm getting kind of above where I pushed out. I'm going to push in a little bit. So my outside finger is below my inside finger, and it's pushing in. I could do what I call strangling it, getting my hands slippery. This is the neck part of the vase. I accidentally got this spinning too fast. Clean up as I go. So now I'm going to work at just the top, the very top. Flare out the lip a little bit by pushing in the neck and pushing down with my top. lean over and look from the side so I can get a better idea of the shape of it. So now I've got most of the shape done, but I'm going to trim up the bottom. This is why I like this tool so much. So right now I'm going to take this and I'm going to trim up the bottom to give it a, basically the bottom of it's buried in this clay right down here. So first I'm going to use this part and scoop, have to hold very tightly so it doesn't grab me. Just scrape this off. That's the excess clay towards the bottom. It is not part of my work. Like I said, hold on tight. So you notice I didn't try and grab that thing. I would have probably messed this up. So right now, this part I'm holding really tightly. I'm gonna, with the idea of shaving this thing, and I'm gonna point the tip towards the bottom, towards the wheel. So I just kind of dug out the bottom shape of my little vase. And I'm very carefully sliding the flat part along the wheel, trying to scrape up this excess clay without pushing it up onto my piece. I'm gonna go back again with this. I can also use the rib to shape up the sides. It also smooths it up a little bit. And I like to quit while I'm ahead. So I'm going to stop this wheel. And this piece is just a simple little base for your first project would be really a very good success. So a lot of times at the beginning, the reason why we have two pieces is you can mess up right away, scrape it off, dry it off, put a new piece on, try again. It happens a lot in the beginning. It's a big learning process about how to center it and then how to build a form. To get this off of the wheel, that's what the wire tool is for. So you want to get some water up onto the wheel here, and you're going to drag the wire under it. This one is still pretty tangled up in here. I'm going to use a different one. You can hand me that. So these are a little bit thick, but it'll be fine. So I got the water on the wheel. I'm going to hold this very tightly and drag it underneath the piece. And you can see how it's moving because of the water. I'm going to try and get this wire out from under it as soon as it comes up without pulling it. There we go. Now I just need to get a piece of wood. I'll slide it off onto a piece of wood, and then I can put it up to dry. That's pretty much the first part of this. I don't have a piece of wood right here. I can get a piece of wood. Actually, there's one right outside the door right there, on the ground. Thank you. All right, so now that I got a piece of wood, I'm gonna put water on this. The first 2/3, I want it to be slippery, or maybe most, and that's the dry part is gonna be like a brake. In case this thing starts sliding across, it'll stop when it hits that part. So I need to very carefully, if this is still moving, yes, put this right up against the edge of the wheel, and then slide this on to the wet piece of wood, and there. So So now I've got it here. It needs to dry, not dry, but it needs to become leather hard. So if I want to work on this tomorrow, then I could leave it out overnight, and first thing in the morning I could cover it with a plastic bag. Since this is the weekend, I'm going to put a plastic bag over it, just drape it over top to keep it leather hard, let it dry to be leather hard, and then on Monday I can show you the second half of trimming. Place the little vase on the board under a bag for the weekend.